You freeze for a second because something has already begun to change, even if you cannot explain it. There is a feeling you have carried for so long, a quiet question that has followed you through ordinary mornings and restless nights. What if someone, somewhere, has been searching for you just as desperately as you have been searching for them? What if every delay, every disappointment, every unexpected goodbye was never the end of your story, but only the silence before something extraordinary? You may believe you have been waiting, but what if the truth is far more mysterious than you ever imagined, because someone has already made a choice that has begun pulling your lives together? You have wondered why certain moments suddenly make your heart race without warning. A song appears at exactly the right time. A stranger smiles at you for reasons that make no sense. The clock seems to repeat the same numbers over and over again. You tell yourself these are only coincidences, yet deep inside, another voice quietly asks whether someone else's hope has somehow reached your soul. You dismiss the thought, until the signs become impossible to ignore. Somewhere, your soulmate reached a point where waiting became unbearable. They looked at the empty spaces in their own life and realized they were not simply missing happiness. They were missing you. They did not know your name. They did not know your face. Yet somehow, they knew someone was absent from their life, and that realization became impossible to escape. But what they decided to do next changed everything in ways neither of you expected. They stopped asking why life had been unfair. Instead, they made a promise in complete silence. A promise no one else heard. A promise carried by tears no one witnessed. They whispered into the darkness that they were ready for real love, even if it meant changing everything about themselves. At that exact moment, something invisible shifted, though neither of you could have understood what had just begun. Perhaps that explains why your own heart has felt different lately. Maybe you have sensed an unusual restlessness. Maybe old relationships suddenly seem too small for who you are becoming. Maybe people who once fit naturally into your world now feel strangely distant. You wondered if something was wrong with you. But what if nothing is wrong? What if your heart has simply begun making room for the person who has been calling your spirit without ever realizing it? Love often arrives long before people meet. It begins inside decisions that seem unrelated. It grows inside prayers spoken alone. It hides inside moments when someone chooses hope instead of fear. Your soulmate unknowingly planted one of those moments, and now its roots are reaching farther than either of you can see. But there is one detail they never expected. They almost gave up. There was one evening when loneliness became louder than faith. They questioned everything. They wondered whether real love existed or whether they had spent years believing in something that belonged only in dreams. Their heart felt exhausted. Their soul felt empty. They came dangerously close to accepting a future without you. If they had stopped there, your paths might never have crossed. Instead, something extraordinary interrupted that moment. Maybe it was a conversation with someone they barely knew. Maybe it was a sentence inside a forgotten book. Maybe it was a dream that felt more real than waking life. Whatever happened, it reminded them that hope sometimes survives even when strength disappears. They stood up with tears still in their eyes and made another decision. This time, it was even stronger. They decided to become the person their future partner deserved. Without realizing it, they were preparing themselves for you. At the same time, strange things began happening in your own life. Opportunities appeared where there had only been closed doors. Certain people quietly disappeared from your journey. Plans fell apart for reasons you could never understand. You called these moments disappointments. Yet what if every closed door was actually redirecting your steps? What if your soulmate's decision had already begun creating changes that reached far beyond their own life? You probably blamed yourself for delays. You asked why nothing seemed to happen when everyone else appeared to be moving forward. You compared your story to stories around you. You wondered whether love had somehow forgotten your address. But love was never lost. It was being protected. Some connections require timing that human hearts cannot fully understand. A flower forced open before spring cannot survive. A seed pulled from the earth too early never becomes a tree. Your story has followed the same hidden wisdom. Every delay carried a purpose that remained invisible because you were standing inside it instead of looking back at it. Your soulmate began noticing symbols they could not explain. Certain places felt strangely familiar. Certain cities kept appearing in conversations. Certain names repeated themselves in unexpected ways. Every coincidence left them wondering whether someone unknown was somehow connected to these moments. They laughed at themselves. They ignored the feeling, yet it always returned stronger than before. Meanwhile, you experienced something remarkably similar. Perhaps you felt drawn toward changing your routine. Perhaps you suddenly wanted to visit somewhere new. Perhaps an old dream refused to disappear no matter how often you ignored it. Nothing seemed connected, yet beneath the surface, countless invisible threads were slowly weaving your stories together. This is the part most people never see. Destiny rarely announces itself with fireworks. It moves quietly, patiently, almost invisibly. It rearranges conversations. It delays departures. It creates unexpected meetings. It protects people from relationships that would have destroyed their future. At the time, these moments often feel unfair. Only later does their true purpose become clear. Your soulmate could never have imagined how much they needed to heal before meeting you. They carried wounds they never spoke about, smiles that covered heartbreak, confidence hiding insecurity, strength covering fear. Meeting you too soon would have meant bringing those unfinished battles into your life. Instead, they chose healing, not because they knew you, because somewhere inside, they believed someone worth loving deserved the healthiest version of themselves. That unseen act became one of the greatest gifts anyone could ever offer another soul. Without even knowing your face, they loved your future enough to change their present. Can you imagine that? Someone you have never met has already sacrificed comfort because of a love they believed was waiting somewhere beyond the horizon. That thought changes everything. Perhaps that explains why you have been changing too. You are not becoming someone different. You are becoming someone ready, ready to recognize a connection deeper than appearance. Ready to choose peace instead of confusion, ready to embrace a love that feels like coming home instead of constantly fighting for acceptance. The closer your paths become, the stranger life may feel. Old chapters begin closing faster. People who once mattered suddenly drift away. Dreams you abandoned unexpectedly return. You start feeling that something important is approaching, even though no evidence exists. This feeling is not empty imagination, it is often how transformation begins. Long before the sunrise becomes visible, the sky quietly changes color. Your life is entering that mysterious hour before dawn, and somewhere else, so is theirs. Your soulmate recently did something else that neither of you fully understands. They stopped searching desperately, not because they stopped believing, because they finally trusted. That single shift released something powerful. Fear loosened its grip, control faded, peace entered. Ironically, it was only after they surrendered the obsession of finding love that love began finding its way toward them, toward you. Perhaps you have sensed that same invitation, to stop forcing, to stop chasing. To stop believing your worth depends on whether someone notices you. Because the love meant for you does not require performance, it requires presence. Every experience you survived has quietly prepared you for this moment. Every tear taught compassion, every disappointment built wisdom. Every lonely night strengthened your ability to recognize genuine love instead of temporary attention. Nothing was wasted, not even your heartbreak, especially not your heartbreak. The greatest transformations often grow from the deepest pain. Your soulmate understands that now. Soon, you will too. There is something they still do not know. They believe they are the one searching. They have no idea that your own heart has also been moving toward them with every difficult decision you made. Neither of you sees the full picture yet. Both of you believe you are walking alone. Neither realizes that your stories have already begun overlapping in ways too subtle for ordinary eyes to notice. Think about that. Every ordinary day may already contain extraordinary meaning. Every delayed appointment, every unexpected conversation, every changed plan, every missed opportunity, every surprising coincidence, they may all belong to the same invisible design. And what happens next changes everything once again, because very soon, one unexpected event will place both of you closer than ever before. Neither of you will recognize its importance immediately. It will appear completely ordinary, a normal choice, a simple moment, an everyday decision. Yet years later, you may look back and realize that was the exact second destiny quietly smiled. Until then, keep watching. Keep believing, keep becoming the person your future deserves, because somewhere, someone who has never held your hand has already been preparing their heart for yours. Someone who once cried because they thought love had forgotten them now carries a hope they cannot explain. Someone who whispered into the silence that they were ready has unknowingly awakened a journey leading straight toward you. And tonight, without either of you realizing it, the distance between your two lives may have become smaller than it has ever been before, because while you were reading these words, another decision may already have been made, a decision that neither of you expected, a decision that could bring your two stories together far sooner than either of you is prepared to imagine. you have no idea how close certain moments already are. That is what makes this part of your journey so mysterious. The biggest turning points rarely announce themselves with loud voices or flashing signs. They often hide inside what seems like an ordinary day. You wake up expecting nothing unusual. You follow your familiar routine. You believe tomorrow will look exactly like yesterday. Yet behind the scenes, countless small details begin aligning with perfect precision, and you cannot see any of them, not yet. Somewhere, your soulmate wakes up with the same unexplained feeling. They cannot describe it. Nothing dramatic has happened. Yet something inside them refuses to settle. It feels like standing near the ocean before the first wave reaches the shore. The air is still. The sky is quiet. Everything appears normal. But deep beneath the surface, powerful currents have already begun moving toward the moment that will change everything. You have probably asked yourself why certain memories suddenly return without warning. Faces from the past appear in your thoughts. Old dreams come back stronger than before. Places you have never visited somehow feel familiar. These moments are not random interruptions. They are gentle reminders that your heart is remembering something your mind has not discovered yet. And every reminder leaves behind another unanswered question that refuses to disappear. There is one truth very few people understand: the soul often recognizes love long before the eyes do. That is why some people meet and immediately feel as though they have known each other forever. Time cannot explain it. Logic cannot measure it. The connection feels older than the conversation itself. It is as if two unfinished stories suddenly recognize they belong in the same book. But before that recognition can happen, something else must be completed. Your soulmate is finishing a chapter they once believed would never end. The pain that once controlled them no longer has the same power. The fear that once made every decision has begun fading into the background. They are laughing more than they used to. They are breathing a little easier. They are finally discovering peace without needing someone else to create it for them. That peace is preparing them for you. At the very same time, your own heart has been changing in ways you may not even notice. The things that once impressed you no longer hold the same importance. You care less about appearances and more about sincerity. You have started valuing kindness over perfection, honesty over excitement, peace over constant uncertainty. Without realizing it, your standards have changed, not because you became difficult, because you became wiser. That wisdom is one of the greatest gifts your journey has given you. Still, there are moments when loneliness whispers that nothing is happening. It tells you that everyone else is moving forward while your own story remains frozen. It asks whether hope is only making the waiting more painful. Those whispers sound convincing because they speak during your quietest moments, but whispers are not always the truth. Sometimes silence is simply where destiny works best. Imagine standing inside a massive cathedral before sunrise. It seems empty. Nothing appears to be happening. Then slowly, almost invisibly, the first light enters through stained glass windows. Colors begin appearing where only darkness existed moments before. The building did not suddenly become beautiful. It always was. The light simply arrived at the perfect time. Your life may be entering that exact kind of sunrise. There is another secret your soulmate has never shared with anyone. They have started talking to the future, not out loud where others can hear, but quietly, inside their own heart. Sometimes they imagine what kind of person they hope to meet. They wonder what your laugh sounds like. They wonder what dreams keep you awake at night. They wonder whether you are also searching. Without realizing it, they are speaking to someone who actually exists. They are speaking to you, and perhaps your own heart has been doing something similar. Maybe you have imagined conversations with someone whose face you cannot picture. Maybe you have wondered whether anyone out there is thinking about you at the exact same moment. The answer may be far closer than you dare believe, because invisible connections often begin with invisible conversations. The universe has a remarkable way of bringing together two people who are both learning the same lesson from different directions. While you learned patience, they learned trust. While you learned forgiveness, they learned courage. While you learned how to heal, they learned how to open their heart again. Different journeys. The same destination, yet there is one final obstacle neither of you expected. Fear has a strange habit of returning just before breakthrough. It whispers that nothing will change. It reminds you of every disappointment. It points toward every unanswered prayer. It convinces you that protecting your heart is safer than believing again. Your soulmate has heard those same whispers. In fact, only recently they almost ignored an opportunity because fear convinced them it would lead to another heartbreak. But something inside refused to let them walk away. That quiet feeling, that gentle nudge, that impossible sense that one more step mattered. It would not leave them alone. They took the step. Anyway, they still have no idea why, neither do you. Not yet. There is something extraordinary about moments that make no sense until much later. They often become the moments that define an entire lifetime. One unexpected invitation, one delayed flight, one changed schedule, one conversation that almost never happened, one simple decision to say yes instead of no. Lives can change forever through moments so ordinary that most people never recognize their importance while they are living them. Perhaps your own ordinary moment is already approaching. Perhaps it is closer than next month, closer than next week, closer than tomorrow, closer than your heart is prepared to believe, because destiny does not always count time the way people do. Sometimes years of preparation exist only for a single meeting, a single glance, a single conversation, a single choice. Everything before it becomes preparation. Everything after it becomes transformation. Your soulmate has begun noticing one repeating thought they cannot explain. They keep feeling that someone important is entering their life. Not someday, soon. The feeling arrives unexpectedly, while driving, while working, while watching the sunset, while sitting alone in complete silence. It appears without warning and disappears just as mysteriously, yet every time it returns, it feels stronger than before. If they knew you were feeling something similar, they would be amazed. Neither of you realizes that your hearts have already begun recognizing the same invisible rhythm, and then something happens that neither of you could have predicted. A name appears. At first, it means nothing, it could belong to anyone. It slips into a conversation, appears on a screen, or is spoken by a stranger in passing. You barely notice it, your soulmate barely notices it, but somehow, that name refuses to disappear. It comes back again, and then again, as though life itself is quietly repeating a message neither of you fully understands. You tell yourself it is only coincidence. They tell themselves the same thing, but deep inside, a question begins growing. What if coincidence has been disguising something much greater all along? Neither of you knows that the next sign will be impossible to ignore, and when it arrives, it will force both of you to ask the one question that has been waiting for this exact moment. What if the person you have been searching for has already taken the first step toward you, and is now only one unexpected moment away from changing your life forever? Your heart may not be ready for what comes next, because this is the part of the journey where everything begins to feel strangely familiar before it becomes real. Nothing dramatic announces itself. There are no flashing lights. No voice from the sky. Instead, life becomes quieter, almost as if the world is holding its breath. And somewhere, without knowing your name, your soulmate pauses in the middle of an ordinary day with the same unexplainable feeling. As though someone they have never met has suddenly crossed their mind. They cannot explain why, you cannot explain why, yet both of you continue living your separate lives, completely unaware that every passing day is shrinking the distance between your stories. What once felt impossible is becoming inevitable, and neither of you can see the invisible path already forming beneath your feet. There was a moment recently when your soulmate almost made a decision that would have taken them in the opposite direction. It looked like the easier path. It promised comfort. It offered familiarity. For a brief moment, they believed that was where their future belonged. Then something happened. Nothing anyone else would notice. A sudden hesitation.